And welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck, podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football, presented by our good friends over at SportBuff, where if you use the promo code AlsFlightdeck10 at checkout, you will save 10% off your entire order. So head over to sportbuffshop.com, use the code SAVE10%, and support local. I am Tim Capper. You can find me on X at Repact. That's REPPACT.
And this is Cliffy D. You can also find me on the platform known as X over at Cliffy D.
A lot to go on this week, hey, buddy? I mean, there's a ton, there's a ton of stuff to talk about this week.
If it was just the game last Friday that we had to talk about, that alone, I think we could still spend another hour on, despite the fact that we spent close to an hour doing Flight Deck Live, talking about what we saw and what transpired against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. We could still expand upon that if we wanted to, but no, because the Alouettes don't have enough going on right now with being 9-1, with all cylinders firing, with everything that's going on right now. I mean, between roster moves and a big game on this Sunday and the festivities that are going to be surrounding said game. I mean, there is definitely, we could make a 5-hour podcast if we wanted to, but I guarantee if we even talk about going past 2 or 3 hours, most people would be like, no, I'm out. That's a no from me, dog. So we're going to keep this tight and keep it right.
Yeah. And being that it is a very special week in the city of Montreal, especially for the Alouettes and especially for the history of the Alouettes. We obviously wanted to bring in somebody this week too that could at least give us a little bit of insight on what it was like to be on that 1974 championship team, didn't we, Cliff?
Oh, absolutely. So excited to be able to welcome not just a member of said 1974 championship team, but also the current president of the Alouettes Alumni Association, who essentially is responsible in a lot of ways for bringing all of these legacy players that were part of that championship team back to Montreal this weekend to help celebrate the 50th anniversary of the 1974 Grey Cup win. We are thrilled beyond belief to be joined this evening by one Ian Mofford. So make sure you stay tuned for that interview. I tell you what, you're going to learn a lot today, folks. You're going to consider this Alouettes history lesson, one of hopefully many to come on this show.
Exactly. Obviously, we went, as Cliff mentioned, we went into in quite detail. I mean, on the Flight Deck Live. If you happen to miss it, make sure you go back and check all of our socials to listen to the very entertaining 50 minutes. Obviously, and everybody who showed up. But again, YouTube probably one of the best places you can go and watch it. YouTube and our Facebook pages. But we still want to go over it a little bit more in detail. Obviously, I've been able to do a little bit more research on a couple of things and stuff like that, and I can give a little more details and stuff like that. But I tell you, Cliff, despite how some of the fans felt, and we're talking obviously Rider fans and the naysayers for the still, and to be fair, we're still not happy with how the command center is, but they have their issues when it comes to the command center this week. And their kicker who goes 3 for 7. But that, the Alouettes did win versus the Saskatchewan Riders 27-24. Davis Alexander's third straight start as an Alouette as the Alouette quarterback got the win. Little tidbits here for him in a couple of minutes, but let's talk about this game real quick, Cliff, because as I said, 27-24. It's funny. Even though the Owls did come out with a win, it really wasn't a perfect game. There are still quite a few things that can be concerning as being an Alouette supporter. But I think just how the team has basically been on the backs of Davis Alexander these past 3.5 games, considering what they've gone through, they came away with one hell of a win. Yeah,
I mean, they always say it's not how you win, but by how many. In this case, it was 3, but my goodness, talk about cinema. I said it before and I'll say it again. I mean, those last 3 minutes, of any CFL game are always, for the most part, very exciting, barring a blowout or something, severe happening. But I mean, when you got football being played like this, wow, just wow. I mean, there is simply nothing more exciting. And we have the Alouettes and the Rough Riders, who a lot of people are starting to already peg as a potential Grey Cup preview. I mean, these two teams just find a way to bring out the best in each other. And this was a dogfight, Tim. I mean, just an absolute battle. I mean, like a real chess match between Corey Mace and Noel Thorpe and Jason Moss. I mean, wow. I mean, it was a match for the ages. And I'm sure Rider fans are understandably upset, very disappointed with Brett Lothar bricking 4 of 7 field goals, one getting taken, back to the house by James Letcher Jr. I mean, that's got to be tough for Rider fans to bear. But I mean, when you take a look at the overall way that the Alouettes came together, Davis Alexander led this team to his 3rd straight win. I mean, there's so much to unpack with this game. There really is. I mean, from start to finish, there's just, let's try and do this. Let's try and break down as quickly as we can everything that we may have missed from Flightdeck Live.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Davis is funny. As I mentioned on Flightdeck Live, his start this week, again on the road, was very reminiscent of his last start on the road in Hamilton. Scoreless first quarter, very low scoring first half, but they were able to get it going in the second half. If you were to give out a anything that stood out the most from the first half alone, Cliff, what would it be? Because obviously, it really was just the second quarter itself for the Alouettes, I think, where they really got going, and then obviously in the second half. But first half alone, what for you? What stood out?
It felt like a lot of other games in the sense that it felt like the Alouettes were just feeling out their opponent. I mean, yes, they did play Saskatchewan a couple of weeks prior to this, but not a whole lot has changed other than the fact that Trevor Harris was behind center for the Riders versus Shea Patterson. I mean, by and large, a couple of pieces here and there. I mean, this was basically the same team that you saw, 3 weeks previous. And Trevor Harris, his first game back too, and no doubt feeling the pressure as well to help get the Riders back on track. Because let's not forget, this Riders team were winless in their last 3 encounters going into this match against Montreal. So they wanted to get off the schneid. They wanted to get a win, especially at home in front of their very loud and very vocal fans. Just under 30,000 were at the game, by the way. And you heard every single one of them at least on TSN, you were able to hear just how loud that place gets. So kudos to Riders Nation for showing up and showing out for their team. But one thing I think about more than anything else is it was very meandering in the first half. I mean, yes, eventually Davis Alexander was able to find Walter Fletcher for a touchdown. And okay, fantastic. That's what you want to see. You want to see this offense moving, but it just felt like it took a little while for things to get into rhythm a little bit. There's more often than not, poor Davis was being hung out to dry by the offensive line. And that was kind of a theme throughout the entire game as well. Like the pocket just kept collapsing around him more often than not. And yeah, Davis does have the capability to get out of the pocket and move with his feet, but he just felt like he was like in no man's land, essentially, and just everything collapsing around him. And he ended up taking a couple of sacks that it shouldn't have happened, quite frankly. I mean, it's frustrating to sit and watch him just get practically killed out there. And you're like, help your quarterback out, for crying out loud. And, I'm pretty sure the O-line this week and Luc Brodeur-Genet have to be looking at the tape and saying to themselves, we got to be better. We got to be better for our quarterback, whether it's Fajardo, Davis Alexander, or even Dominique Davis. Whoever is behind us, we got to play for that guy, and we got to step up in a big way. So I'm sincerely hopeful that this week in practice, a lot of the O-line is getting it together, figuring it out, and doing everything they can to make sure that they protect their quarterback come Sunday. Because let's face it, they're going to be facing an Edmonton Elks team that is very tough, and all of a sudden they don't know how to lose. So I mean, it's going to be this game isn't so cut and dry. Like if you look at the records of these two teams, and you can see they're almost going in 2 different directions. But Edmonton's starting to figure stuff out now too. So I mean, this isn't the gimme that we thought it was going to be, say, 4 or 5 weeks ago.
No, not at all. For me, the one thing that really stood out, obviously, as you're saying, besides the O-line, the one time that the O-line actually did help was that 46-yard pass to Cole Speaker. That really set the tone, I think, really for the after being, again, scoreless in the first quarter. being able to basically hold, even though Saskatchewan had 7 points, it was because they missed field goals, 2 field goals, and a rouge, and the Owls were able to get back and tie this game. They really were. I mean, and Speaker again, right place, right time, and then obviously the touchdown went to Walter Fletcher. So
yeah, that's the thing about Cole Speaker. I feel like that's been his sort of calling card this year, is just being at the right place at the right time, which, again, if you're an Alouettes supporter, you love to see it because you want to see everybody making plays happen. And, Davis has been doing a fantastic job of spreading the ball out to the receivers and definitely making great use of the backfield as well with Walter Fletcher, who's also, too, not shy of catching passes. But, I mean, Cole Speaker has just been... He's not someone you think about necessarily a whole lot. You don't see him as like among the league leaders in receptions or yards or anything like that. But man, you need someone to be there just at the right place at the right time. That's your guy. I mean, he's like Johnny on the spot. Like you don't even think about it. And next thing you know, as you said, boom, 46 yards downfield, fresh set of downs, and the Alouettes all of a sudden are in scoring range. I mean, that's invaluable as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I mean, and then again, in the second half, where again, Davis finally got the time. The Owls were basically playing catch up for most of the game, but I mean, it was an interesting second half to say the least. I mean, Davis for the game was 22 of 33 for 285 yards and a touchdown, no picks. And you know
what? That's something else to be said too. Like neither quarterback threw a pick. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, you would expect it from Trevor Harris because, yes, he is a solid veteran who is still able to, make things happen, just like he did against Montreal this past Friday. But for Davis, despite being under pressure, despite, some of the roadblocks that kept getting thrown up against him, I mean, he really didn't make any mistakes in this game. And if that doesn't give you hope for the future, simply put, I struggled to think what else could make you happy as far as, what do you want from, your starting quarterback, who in this case was Davis Alexander. You want someone who is going to make the right moves and not make mistakes. And simply put, you cannot make mistakes against a team like Saskatchewan. And I give Davis all the credit in the world. Like he stepped up despite a very challenging week for him personally. He was able to focus on this game, and he got the W. I mean, that alone, it just is remarkable, absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, Davis had a lot of guys that he threw to. Another guy who's really making a name for himself now is Charleston Rambo. He had 7 receptions for 94 yards. He did lead the team in receiving yards. Cole Speaker was second at 92. Then it was Walter Fletcher at 65. Then it was Reggie White Jr. with 13, David Dallaire with 12, and Nate Bahar with 9. And Shedler, they tried to get one to Shedler, but I think it went over his head. See, this is one of the worst times to get a target, where the ball really gets over your head, but they got to give it to somebody. That's what it was for Shedler on this one. So it's not much you could do about it. But all in all, dude, I mean, I said these guys are stepping up. Walter's, again, it seems to be a good type of broken record when we're talking about Walter Fletcher out of the backfield as a receiver. He's doing a very good job. Charleston Rambo, again, is making a name for himself. But again, one thing that I did point out on the podcast, Cliff, on Flightdeck Live, is that still, even though, Davis Alexander led the team, which we've seen before with our quarterback leading the team in rushing, he had 33 yards and obviously the winning touchdown where he tiptoed down the sideline I was trying to think of something funny. It just didn't come out. But, again, issues with this running game. Walter Fletcher, 6 attempts, 14 yards. As I mentioned before, post-game on our post-game show, excluding the short yardage plunges by Dominic Davis, the Alouettes had a grand total of 3 rushes in that second half. And it really shows. Again, I said at the beginning, not perfect, but this is one of the reasons why. And this is something I'm hoping that they're able to control, because to get going, because it's just looking at the weapons that the Elks have, it would be nice to have everything go at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Run defense is something that we've been concerned about now for the Alouettes for a number of weeks now. And when I look at what Edmonton has, like their running game is starting to get going now. I mean, even though Kevin Brown, their incumbent running back, has been out due to injury. I mean, you got guys like Javon Leake and Justin Rankin, who all of a sudden has come out of nowhere and become a force in the backfield. So that is something I am concerned about defensively for the Alouettes. And it's been like that for a while now. And I wish there was a magic formula or just something that they're just not like, just if it was something simple that could be corrected that would fix all the problems when it came to the run defense, that'd be one thing, but there really isn't. It just, sometimes I hate to say it, but sometimes it be like that. And you don't want it to be like that, but sometimes it be like that. So my only hope is every week when they go in for practice, I have to believe they're looking at the film. They're trying to see, okay, what can we do better? What can we do to improve upon this run defense? Something, anything. I mean, especially when you're going against teams that simply put know how to move the rock and, not just throwing it in the air, but on the ground. And the last thing you want to do is give up yardage to anybody. But, this is definitely something that I would find concerning, and sincerely hope that eventually they do find that magic formula.
Yeah, they need to. Because it can't be a consistently pass from the Alouettes, even though it's working. We need to have some sort of way to throw the other defense off guard.
And listen, it's not like Fletcher can't run. I mean, he can definitely run. It's just if and I hate to go back and pick on the O-line, but I mean, they're the ones that have to create the holes for Fletcher to hit.
Yeah.
And when he's able to do it, it's a work of art. It's a thing of beauty. But I feel like a lot of where Fletcher's strength now lies is in his ability to catch the pass. And even if it is second and short or something like that, if he is captain checkdowns, then so be it. Yes, he can get those yards after catch, but it'd be nice too, seeing as how he's a running back, why not let him get some rushing yards as well? I mean, I guess if the opportunity is not there, it's not there. But at the same time, you sort of have to create the opportunity. So again, I don't want to be picking on the O-line too much, but I mean, that's something too that really needs to, that would definitely help alleviate a lot of the pressure on the quarterback, regardless of who it is, to not feel like everything has to be a last minute play. I mean, let's not forget too, Davis, he's got that shovel pass down to a T. And the funny thing is, there's a couple of times where he hit that with Fletcher, and Fletcher went for a nice run. Problem is, it doesn't count as a run. That counts as a pass. So once again, his receiving yards, absolutely phenomenal, but we got to see his rushing yard. Like you got to show that he's among one of the finest running backs this league has to offer. And you can't do that if he's too busy catching passes and running. So again, something's going to have to give as far as I'm concerned. I agree with you in that regards, that this running game is good. It needs to be improved. And simply put, there's no other way to sugarcoat it. It's got to be better for everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, we were talking about different sparks and stuff like that. Again, it was, the Alouettes are back by 4 heading into the fourth quarter. Brett Lowther misses another one of those field goals from 38 yards, and James Letcher, we knew he was finally going to break out of his doldrums and have a return touchdown. He did just absolutely that. 128 yards on the return for the touchdown, Cliff. 1 yard shy of tying the Alouettes team record. Was it Trent Guy?
It was Trent Guy.
Yeah, Trent Guy tying that record. And on top of that, obviously it was great to see James score that touchdown, and then his swag in the end zone at Rider Nation. But
and what gets me, like that would normally take the wind out of a lot of sails. And I think Rider fans were feeling it at that moment, like, oh my God, like especially considering Lowther missed 2 more or 2 other attempts previously. Like that was his 3rd at that point. And spoiler alert, there's a 4th. But I mean, at that point, you're like, what the hell? I mean, there's having the yips, which I thought that's what it was initially. Maybe Lowther was just having the yips, but I mean, this cost. I mean, this isn't just leaving 3 points on the field. No. This is giving up points, and it's in a game like this when both teams are just throwing haymakers at each other, and just both are really landing some solid shots. This was one that normally would have crippled a lot of teams, but give the riders all the credit in the world. It didn't completely deflate them. I mean, they stormed back, which is phenomenal.
Yep, they did. And I was going to say on the Letcher thing, and for once, I can say, it can be a good and bad thing, but I always like to see a good sky cam. That angle, whoever chose to go with that angle on the Letcher return should get an Emmy, a sports Emmy, an ESPY, a something, because
Gemini,
something, all of them, because that was gorgeous directing and keeping the cameras on James Letcher and not switching once to one of the other cameras in stadium. Sticking with the sky cam was just absolutely poetry.
I know. I thought at one point Letcher was going to jump into my living room, and I'm like, am I going to catch this guy? Like that was the exact angle that they were showing, and absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that is some top tier production right there. I know it's a sky cam, but are we sure it's not a drone that maybe was just kind of falling out? Because that was
it was amazing.
With the twists and turns that Letcher was making in order to take it to the house, like, wow, for the camera to be able to follow along, or almost felt like lead the way. Like, if you didn't know better, you swear Letcher was running at the camera too. And, conversely, looked like he was about to jump into our homes. But
completely different angle than the one that he returned in Edmonton, because obviously the one in Edmonton was at his back. The camera was at his back, and they missed him catching it first. And there was no sky cam over at Commonwealth at that time.
No.
Obviously, we have to talk about what is, and then we'll move on. Talk about what is the elephant in the room. The touchdown, or as Ray and I should quote, air quotes, touchdown by Davis Alexander. It was an amazing play. It really was, for him to take it on his back and score with 30 seconds left. But obviously, and it's funny, in Al's history, we've seen things before. I don't know if you remember the one. We've had calls go against us like that too. I can't remember who the head coach was, but I think it was Danny Mack, actually. It was either Danny Mack or Mark Tressman, where another returner went down the sideline and they stepped out of bounds, but they had called it a touchdown originally. And Danny's, the coach was like, here's a challenge flag. He says, I know he stepped out of bounds because he stepped on my foot. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember what year that was, but still, it was all about the angles for this. If there'd been a sky cam there for this angle, we may be saying something completely different, Cliff. Something different. But because of the way the angle was, everybody was able to choose their own narrative. But the thing is, the command center, they made the choice based off of that's the angle. Those are the angles that they had, and they could not overturn it. I'm trying. What was the actual call on the field?
It was a touchdown.
No. Meaning, what was the call that came from the ref? I'm trying to remember what the actual call was. Was it that it stands?
I think the challenge was essentially that the runner went out of bounds, or stepped out of bounds.
Right. Well, it was not a touchdown, so it was challenge. It was reviewed anyways. Yeah.
Yes. No, sorry. You know what? I'm thinking, because there was also a PI call.
Oh, that's true. Oh God, don't even remind me about the PI call. But needless to say, as I said, that was the angle. That's what they called. No, I think it's, as you said on Flightdeck Live, no conspiracy, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it was. It was a touchdown.
And yes, we've seen all the photos now. We've seen a lot of things were blown up, or it looked like Alexander's foot was touching out of bounds, or the grass was white grass was moving between the feet, all sorts of things. Like, there's tons of narratives, and depending on which way you go, whether you're an Alouette supporter or a Rough Rider supporter, you're going to believe what you want to see. Like, you're going to convince yourself that this is the call that you want to happen. The fact that you could probably show that to 10 people, 5 are going to say he was out of bounds. 5 are going to say he was in bounds. You know what that makes it? Inconclusive.
Exactly.
The role of the command center, and our man JC Abbott from 3 Down Nation summarized it perfectly. The fact that you can do this makes it inconclusive. What's the goal of the command center? To help provide a conclusive answer, to help correct calls that were made on the field or calls that were missed. The fact that there was inconclusive evidence at that point, you go with the call that was on the field, which was a touchdown.
Like the interception. They corrected the interception that wasn't.
Exactly.
So,
again, and let's make it very clear. If these calls happen to have favored Saskatchewan, okay, it is what it is. I mean, that it's undeniable. I mean, you could be upset if you're a Riders fan. You could maybe think that you got jobbed as a result of this, but ultimately, it is what it is. I mean, you want to say like ball don't lie, film don't lie, whatever you want to say. Like, I mean, it is what it is. The evidence doesn't lie. I mean, you can twist it however which way you want it, but sometimes it's as clear as day. I mean,
I'm curious to know if there was a sky cam view, but it may have been out of position.
So that's it. Like,
anyways, it is what it is. It is what it is. I understand where Rider Nation's coming from.
I mean, did
he step out of bounds? Command center said no. Cliff and I would say no because we saw the green in between his cleat and the out of bounds mark. But people are saying, well, what about his foot? His foot like it stepped out of bounds. It may have been off the ground. As he was shifting. Again,
I mean, you'd have to be a physicist really to really understand the dynamics and explain it better than we could ever hope to. But I mean, there truly was green in between his cleat and the sideline. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but that means he's not out of bounds. And you can contest this. You know, you can spend the rest of the season contesting this, but it is what it is. And ultimately, that's not what caused the Riders to lose this game. They had a chance to win it, and well, let's talk about that now really quick. I mean, 27-24, less than 30 seconds, and as we've seen in the CFL, even this year alone, 30 seconds is a lot of time to get downfield and get into scoring position. And give Trevor Harris his due. I mean, he did what he had to do. He put the team on his back and marched them downfield. And
because of the Jose Maltos miss on the extra point.
Yeah, his first miss of any kind this year, actually, since taking over for David Cote. What a time to do it, though, because, again, had he made that point after touchdown, then, the Riders would have had no choice but to go and score a tutty. But because of that shank, unfortunately, a field goal from Lothar would have sent this game into overtime. Now, I'm sure the Riders don't want to go into overtime after what had happened in Ottawa a couple of weeks previous, but listen, you're playing to win, right? So all they needed was a chance. And what didn't help, though, was Nafis Lyon and his horse collar tackle.
Yep.
Kind of funny because the Alouettes were the beneficiaries of a horse collar tackle earlier this year, in this game. So I guess you win by the horse collar, you lose by the horse collar. I mean, it's football sometimes, but I mean that was a major, major boost for Trevor Harris and company just to get that much closer downfield and give Lothar the chance to kick the game-winning field goal, or game-tying field goal, I should say.
Yep, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen, and the Alouettes won. I said 27-24. They moved to 9-1. They set a league franchise record for most consecutive wins on the road, which is now at 8. And here's some interesting stats, by the way, for Davis Alexander, because obviously this may change this week from what we're seeing currently and what's been said already on local radio. But for Davis Alexander, Cliff, he's won his last 3 starts. Unlike what the CFL said, by the way, winning his last 4. Come on, get real. God, do people not know how to reach out to Steve Daniel? Anyways, Davis Alexander, with his 3 consecutive wins, with his 3 first starts as wins, moves into a very unique club for the Alouettes and for this franchise. So Davis Alexander was his first 3 starts this year, has moved into a tie with Caleb Evans, who did it over 2 years. He did it once this year, 1 game this year and 2 last year. Okay. Vernon Adams, which was 3 consecutive back in 2016. The GOAT, Anthony Calvillo, even did it also in 1998. But it wasn't 3 consecutive. It was 3 games. I think it's Vernon Cole back in 1964 did it for 3 straight. And I don't have his first name. I should have looked it up again, but quarterback by the last name of Marriott. He also had 3 straight in 1963.
Wow.
Those are the only quarterbacks in Alouettes history that have won their first 3 career starts.
I mean, what more can we say about Davis Alexander? We've been pumping this kid's tires for, this is his 3rd season with the Alouettes, and we've been on board since day one, essentially. I mean, we knew the kid was something special. I mean, he's proven it every single time. Every start he hasn't been perfect. Let's not get that, don't get it twisted. He hasn't been perfect. There's a lot of things that he could be, doing a little bit better, but I mean, when it comes to the will to win and the intestinal fortitude it takes to become a quarterback in this league, he's got it. He truly has got it. I mean, it's phenomenal. And I couldn't be more prouder than him. Just for watching him, that first training camp back in 2022, all the way to here now in 2024, absolutely sensational. I mean, and he just gets it, right? And so humble too. I mean, like you ask him about it, and he's like, no, it's the team. The team, I got a great group of guys behind me and supporting me. I mean, like he's not full of himself. He's a humble, hardworking kid who definitely deserves all the flowers, definitely deserves the accolades, definitely deserves everything that's coming to him. I mean, he's just something special here.
Yep. In this game, at one point, it looked like Davis may have had to come out. And it seemed to be that, with Cody Fajardo being active as a second stringer last week, he may come in. That didn't end up happening. But very interesting, considering what we have seen so far this week in practice, Cliff, and leading up to the game, because there really was currently, in my opinion, one catalyst this week that really set off some dominoes, which could mean many very, very exciting things for the Alouettes. And that was the return of the Big Mac, Austin Mack, to the team. Him and Danny came to an agreement for the rest of this year. And so we have heard they seem to be working on a long-term contract. We've heard that only off social media, and we've heard it ourselves. But thoughts, Cliff, because thoughts, Cliff, on Austin coming back. Considering what has happened, we saw the post-game practice scrum today. He just wants to play. And we found out he's also expecting again too. He's also expecting. So they're expecting the second child in October. Him and his wife.
Technically, his wife's expecting, not him.
Sorry, yeah. But still, he wants to have some stability. So,
yep.
Surprised that it was a surprise that I'm sure to Alouettes Nation and to everybody in the CFL. I'm sure everybody in the CFL is like, Owls get more stacked. But most people forget, considering how many of our wide receivers have gone down, it's really nice to have Mac back in the nest, back in the hangar.
Without question. I mean, we know what a phenomenal playmaker he was in 2023. I mean, and talk about someone who got it, right? I mean, like, he already had his chance with the NFL and wasn't able to catch on there. Figures, okay, I'm going to go do what everybody tells you. Go up to Canada, go kick their ass, and you'll come back and you'll be better than ever. And that's exactly what he did. He went to Canada. He came up here with the right attitude, didn't think he was too cool for school or anything like that. He wanted to play football. He wanted to play football and show what he can do.
Too cool for school. Okay.
Oh, you know what I mean. But
I did too, man. I thought it was good too.
But again, the right attitude. He was excited to be in Montreal. He was excited to contribute. He really, truly wanted to be a part of this organization, and he was, and he became a superstar without question. I mean, and so quickly as well. I mean, his rise was just through the roof. Absolutely phenomenal Grey Cup game. Finally becoming a football champion. And he said, okay, I got to try again. I got to try the NFL again. And you know what? We were all for it. He said, yeah, absolutely, man. Go do your thing. Like you know, you've got a home here in Montreal if you want it. And I think just going in with that knowledge, I think that's, you know, he did the right thing. You got to try and make it. And quite frankly, I don't see how the Atlanta Falcons could have let him go. Like, knowing what kind of talent it is, and you want to call it bias or whatever, then fine, so be it. But
Mac called it politics, and he had a very good way of explaining it without complaining.
Yeah, and again, Nathan Rourke knows all too well what Austin Mack had to go through, because, and the funny thing, Austin Mack's not Canadian, and he went through the same sort of, I guess we'll say, for lack of a better term, politics that Nathan Rourke had to go through. Both of those guys were on the Atlanta Falcons and let go. And, you know, I guess they realized, okay, you know what? This is all fun, and this is fun and all, but I got to play. I got to play football. I got to get on the field. Nathan Rourke did that, went back to the BC Lions, and now Austin Mack is back in the 5-1-4. And quite frankly, couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier to see the Big Mac back. And yeah, with guys like Tyson Philpott and Keon Julian Grant on the 6-game list, that's tough. It sucks. But knowing that Austin Mack is back in the fold and watching him get back into the groove, you know, back like he never left, I'm excited to see that. I'm excited for Sunday to see Austin Mack back on the field at Percival Molson Stadium. You know, I don't want to say he's going to be revenge-minded in the sense that he wants to prove the NFL that they screwed up again. I don't think it's about that for Austin now. I think he just wants to go and show what he can do. And there's no question in my mind, if he's back and he stays long-term in Montreal, he will become a franchise player. He will be that guy, like an S.J. Green or a Eugene Lewis, a guy that is revered and loved for his pass catching ability. And you see tons of Austin Mack jerseys in the stadium over the next couple of years. That is something I definitely see happening. As long as the Big Mac wants to stay put here in Montreal, he is going to become a bona fide superstar in this league.
Now, obviously, with what's happened over the past couple of weeks, you know, with how everybody's been working out, how well Rambo's been doing playing, and, you know, and with some of these guys going down and other guys stepping in, found out today, Cliff, at least, obviously, Cody was practicing with the ones today. So that goes to my comment earlier. I think we knew who was going to start this week. But secondly, it looks like Austin Mack, as he even said today, and as reported by, I think it's reported by TVA, is that that Mack is going to be switching to the field side wide receiver. So Rambo is going to be staying boundary. And even Mack today was saying in the post-game scrum is that it's something he does have to learn. I mean, it's true. It's a different side of the ball. It's kind of like what Tyson did, because Tyson switched sides too. So I'm interested to see. I wouldn't expect anything else. I would expect him to be a starter this week. But it'd be interesting to see how well he can acclimate. I'm sure he can do that very easily. But I think if he's able to get used to this, you know, I'm sure we'll be able to see the same Mac that that we saw last year.
And it's not like there's been so many wholesale changes to the Alouettes offense that he's going to feel like he's walking into a different dressing room. I think he's going to see a lot of the familiar faces. He's going to see the Cody Fajardos. He's going to see the Walter Fletchers. He's going to see Cole Speaker. He's going to see all those guys, even the guys that are injured. He's going to see those guys like, yeah, this is where I belong. This is my house. And yeah, okay, you're going to put him on the different side of the field altogether. Okay, you know, it's something to try. It's something to see if that's going to work, because now you're going to have two potentially powerful deep threats on each side of the field for the Alouettes. I mean, that like to wide out on both sides is absolutely fantastic, and is just going to increase the playmaking ability for whoever's behind center, whether it's Cody Fajardo, Davis Alexander, or even Dominique Davis if he wants to, you know, try to, you know, instead of diving forward for a first down, if he decides he wants to grip it and rip it, imagine him, you know, pulling a Caleb Evans kind of fadeaway jumper to an Austin Mack. Oh my! I would love to see that. That would be absolutely phenomenal.
Now, obviously, with the addition of Matt Cliff, and obviously this was going to happen anyways later on in the season once we've had some of these guys on the 6th game come back and be activated again. There was some slight modifications to the actual roster itself, and I don't know how to feel about this actual transaction itself, Cliff. But if you want, go ahead and go through the really, and there were a few transactions that took place yesterday that that some supporters can deem significant.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and it's not just about Austin Mack being signed. I mean, that alone is a huge transaction.
Yeah.
But as you said, there's implications to that as well. I mean, you just can't just put him on the roster and, okay, there you go. You got to wiggle and jiggle things around a little bit. As a result, since Austin Mack is a wide receiver that's going to be starting, that means another wide receiver typically has to sit one out. As a result, Reggie White Jr. is back on the practice roster. That concerns me a little bit simply because he really has been outstanding since this comeback season of his has been absolutely wonderful. I mean, he's just been a dog as far as catching passes and scoring touchdowns and just being there for whoever the quarterback is. I mean, he's found a great connection with Davis Alexander, had a couple of nice catches from Cody Fajardo. I mean, Reggie White has been that guy, and it really speaks to the embarrassment of riches as well as the ratio as well, which I'll explain momentarily about why I feel that's probably the reason why Reggie White is on the practice roster now. My concern, though, is in theory, someone could sign him. And this is something I'd like to get clarification of. I'm pretty sure you'd have to.
You're right, yeah.
In theory, I mean, they'd have to start him, but in theory, someone could sign. If he's on the practice roster, someone could sign him. And they'd have to play him right away. He'd have to start right away for that team, but I don't know if you can refuse, I don't know if someone tries to sign you off the practice roster, I don't know if you can refuse that. Like maybe
I don't think you can in the CFL. I don't think you can, but it's been a long time since somebody's claimed somebody off the practice roster.
Yeah.
Because of that option that you have to start them.
Right. So, I mean, and listen, you don't want to be on the practice roster. You want to be playing. You want to be in the active roster. But so, I mean, listen, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if there's a team out there that's desperate for a good receiver, I mean, you're not going to find much better than Reggie White Jr. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie. That's a concern for me right there. I understand the scenario. I understand, the situation, especially with the ratio being what it is. You've got Shedler Fervius and Nate Bahar as your de facto Canadian receivers. You can't sit those guys. How do you sit Cole Speaker after we just talked about how he's been so clutch at certain moments of a game? Charleston Rambo, as you said, his rookie season, but he's just been playing, absolutely phenomenal football over the past few weeks. And listen, it goes on. And now you're going to add Austin Mack to this lineup. Holy cow. I mean, it's such a good problem to have for the Montreal Alouettes, but at the same time, it sucks to see someone who's been doing so well, who's been balling out so hard, like Reggie White Jr., and just tell him, sorry, bud, we don't have a spot for you right now. Just grab a seat and stay healthy. Like it's so tough.
Yeah, fifth on the team in yardage and reception yards and second in touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I mean any other team, he'd be a starter without question. But I mean this Montreal Alouettes team clearly now is beyond stacked at receiver. I mean it really is a good problem to have, but at the same time, you feel for a guy like Reggie who deserves so much better. But, it's a numbers game, folks. I mean, there's really not much we can do about that. Also joining him on the practice roster is Nafis Lyon, which I think may end up being a good thing right now, just because that last game against Saskatchewan, he did not look great. I mean, he got burned pretty bad for a touchdown by Mitch Picton. During that last drive where Saskatchewan was trying to at least tie the game to go over into overtime, he had a very costly horse collar tackle. I mean, I don't think he meant to do it, but it still happened. I mean, that's still on his watch. So as exciting a player as Nafis Lyon is, and a very important part of the secondary, I mean, those are some critical errors. And maybe it's just a matter of, okay, maybe sit this one out. Like we won't put you on the 1 game injured list or, come up with some sort of way to tuck you away there. But maybe this is kind of like that wake up call that like, listen, this kind of play, it didn't cost us this time, but one of these days it's going to cost. And do you really want to wear those goat horns? So, I mean, maybe this may end up being a blessing in disguise for Lyon, but I still think he's a phenomenal player. But I mean, those two gaffes alone are very, very hard to overcome.
Yeah, for sure. And might as well just go ahead and finish them off here, Cliff. We had added from the practice roster to the game roster is Donald Ventrelli. Said Navisa's line was put to the practice roster, but Tyson Otis Copeland, DB, he was also transferred to the 6-game injury list. So we needed somebody else to come up. Also, the addition from the practice roster also is KD Davis, the linebacker,
Yep.
out of North Texas. So, you know, there were some changes. There were some changes, obviously, and when we'll see what happens, because as you said, maybe just 4 defeats, maybe we'll just take a couple of games on the practice roster, get things back to where they are. And I tell you, dude, I do not envy Jason Moss and Danny Machocha when it comes to the decisions that are going to have to be made once all of our wide receivers get healthy. So it's going to be very interesting, especially with that ratio.
See, that's just it. And again, our top 2 Canadian receivers, Tyson Philpott and Keon Julian Grant, they're on that 6-game list.
Yeah.
But if they get healthy and they're able to come back, especially for the what will no doubt be a playoff run right now, I mean, you got to get them on the field. You got to find a way to, and once again, you're going to have to tell us to take a seat. And it really is a good problem to have, but oh my God, like the mental gymnastics that are involved to try and sort out the ratio and just make sure you put the best team going forward. I mean, it really is a good problem to have. I mean, that's, you really got to take your hat off to Danny Machocha at just being able to build a championship roster like this, maintain a championship roster. And ultimately, it looks like you're building another championship roster at the same time. I mean, just finding ways to get better, and not just at one position, but at several positions. I mean, that's what you want to see. And my God, I mean, it's only now it seems like Danny Machocha is getting his flowers when it comes to building this roster, and well deserved. I mean, look what he's been able to do. Look at the talent he's been able to unearth over the past couple of seasons. Not just national talent in the draft, but a lot of these free agents, like a lot of these guys that you didn't know from a hole in the wall, this time last year, and all of a sudden they become superstars. And now you got guys like Charleston Rambo this year that are emerging and given an opportunity to show what they can do and excelling in the process. I mean, to the point where Rambo, you can't sit this guy. I mean, yeah, he's technically the rookie. He would normally be like the low man on the totem pole, so to speak, but you can't sit this guy. So I mean, yeah, you got to make a tough choice. And ultimately Reggie White Jr., a veteran who again has been playing absolutely phenomenal football. He's the odd man out. I mean, it sounds so hard to believe, but I mean, the fact that the Alouettes have this kind of talent, this kind of depth at the receiver position, and in other places as well, they've got a great problem to have. You've got Davis Alexander, who's been playing out of his mind football and being an absolute leader. He's going to have to give way to Cody Fajardo because this is Cody Fajardo's football team, unquestionably. But what a problem to have. Like, you've got 2 top-tier quarterbacks as far as I'm concerned, and only 1 quarterback spot. I mean, other than putting Davis on the field as another receiver, what else are you going to do with him? It's wow. I mean,
onside punts. Yeah, I know. Obviously, as I said, once the depth charts are released, they'll be done so on Saturday. So make sure you stay tuned to all of our socials for that information. But also leading up to this game, before we talk to our special guest this week, Cliff, we got to talk what's going to be leading up to what the Owls are going to be offering. So as we said, it is and if you haven't had tickets, why not? Because I can only imagine what type of game this is going to be. This type of game does not come this type of celebration does not come all that often. So the Alouettes are going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the 1974 Grey Cup champion Montreal Alouettes. There are going to be quite a few players that are going to be on hand for. They're going to have a signing, autograph signing before the game, just after the gates open. You're going to have specialty merch that will be available to the fans, including 50. I can't believe this. Only 50 retro Delta logo jerseys. Those will be available. Also, since they're wearing those, they might as well just go, go the entire, 12 yards. They're going to have these gorgeous vintage, what are they calling them? They're throwback jerseys, but they're sort of an homage jersey, so to speak. So, but they've done everything right. They're going to look as close as possible to what the Alouettes wore in 1974 during the entire season leading up to that Grey Cup win. And if you haven't seen the pictures online, check out all of our socials because they look gorgeous. They are going to be selling these things through Dash again this year. So game worn jerseys.
Yeah.
I mean,
they'll be up for auction. You should mention.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. So again, what do you, and I know you're not the biggest uniform guy, Cliff, but what did you think of when you first saw the video and the pictures that came out for these tribute uniforms? What was your thought?
Oh snap! I mean, these were absolutely beautiful. I mean, it brought me back to 2010 when the Alouettes wore those same style retro uniforms, and they looked amazing. If there was a complaint, it was they should put the Delta logo on the front like they did back in the day. Instead, they had them on the sides, and it still looked great. It still looked like really cool, especially to see guys like Anthony Calvillo and Ben Cahoon, Avon Coburn, and so on rocking those uniforms. They looked absolutely phenomenal. And that was a great football game, too, against the Saskatchewan Riders, because they also wore their retro uniforms to the game as well. It was absolute beauty. These uniforms for 2024 are stunning. They look absolutely stunning, and they got it right. They put the Delta on the front. I mean, and they're going to have the numbers on the side, just like they did back in 1974. I mean, it's an aesthetic that a lot of people may not appreciate nowadays, and it looks extremely dated, but that's the point. It's retro. It's supposed to look dated, and it's something that you don't see very much anymore. And I got to tell you, when I saw those uniforms, like, wow, you freaking nailed it. I mean, that just looks absolutely beautiful. And can we talk about the sponsorship patches?
Oh, in an age where baseball teams and MLB are going faux back, no, sir. Not in this case. Not at all.
No, again, you could tell Pierre-Carl Pelado, owner of the Alouettes, putting in his, helping to advertise his product, of course. So you've got Videotron and TVA Sports as the sponsorship patches, but these are not just regular run-of-the-mill patches. Like, these are of the logos from yesteryear for both companies. To me, that's just such a solid touch. I mean, you and I didn't even know Videotron had a retro logo, a logo from back in the day. But lo and behold, there it is. And oh my, just so nice. I mean, sponsorship patches are, whether you love them or hate them, I mean, they're here to stay, folks. I mean, and especially in the CFL, you're going to see sponsorship patches no matter what. I mean, but you know what? If you got to have them, let's have some fun with them. The fact that they were able to make them look like they could have been used back in the day, back in 1974. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Like, just a nice little detail like that most teams would probably overlook. I mean, imagine for example, the Riders wearing their retro uniforms, but then you've got crypto.com or some nonsense like that, like something that's clearly not from yesteryear.
Yeah.
At least with a little detail like this, it's still a current sponsor for all intents and purposes, but to have it in that sort of retro stylized, giving that retro stylized look for, as though you could have imagined this would have been in 1974. I mean, such a nice touch, just a great attention to detail that I'm sure most people would be like, yeah, whatever, it's a patch, but okay, fine. But just the way I see it, if you're going to do it properly. And also, too, I want to know, if you are going to do 1974, then you got to do it all the way. You got to let people smoke in the stands again. You guys serve beer and Stubbies for 75 cents.
Bats 50 is sponsoring the game.
So. There you go. I mean, could you imagine if all of a sudden they just say, here, Stubby beers, 75 cents, just like it was back in 1974. Holy moly.
I seriously doubt they're going to bring back prices for that. It'd be nice if they brought down the prices of beer. But and if people know me as I am, I'm going to make sure I get a story. I want to hear the story behind how these uniforms came to be and whose idea it was to go with those retro patches. Because it's, if again, as you stated, if these things look anything like they did in 2010, I could, win or lose games, this is going to be a great look on the field for this team. It really, really is. So
It
I
is.
can't wait.
I'm excited to see how it's going to look in person. I mean, I'm sure the photos don't do it justice. I think once you see these things up close and personal, it is going to be absolutely
The
stunning.
in-action photos can't wait for. I want to see the stuff from CP. I want to see the stuff from the local reporters and the Alouettes, the Alouettes photographers. I want to see what these photos look like because they look at glam shots are cool in person, even better, even better.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we have all that stuff leading up to the game. There's gonna be a halftime thing that they're going to be doing, but since we're talking about that, Cliff, talking about people coming into the city, talking about the celebration of the 50th anniversary. We're bringing on somebody that can give us a little bit of insight about that type of thing, can't he?
Oh, absolutely, because he was there. He was a part of that 1974 championship winning team. Absolutely excited to be able to have a member of that team who you're going to meet this Sunday at Percival Wilson Stadium, ladies and gentlemen, if you get there early enough as part of the autograph session. But let's get right to it. We're going to bring him in right now. We are very excited to have on the show this evening the one, the only, number 10 back in 1974 for the Alouettes, Ian Mofford.
The Alouettes have a very special game coming up this week, and obviously, the 50th anniversary of that 1974 Grey Cup championship team. We obviously wanted to bring in some former members of the team itself and talk about what it was like playing back then, what it was like to be an Alouette, and obviously what they're looking forward to when it comes to their experience on Sunday. With us on the line this week is a gentleman who played again with that 1974 team, wide receiver Ian Mofford. Ian, we greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to this podcast.
Now, I was reading up on you, just trying to find a little bit more information about you, and I think one of the main one of the main things that stood out to me is that when it comes to winning a championship, some of these guys, especially now, they'll maybe their early 20s, maybe 22, 23 or whatever. You actually won the cup with the Alouettes in 74 when you were 19 years old.
Yes. That was a funny story. I got a scholarship through the Alouettes to South Carolina. Went down. I didn't particularly like the environment, and I came back to Montreal, and I wasn't going to play, and they sent me to Loyola, and I practiced with them and made the team. And then I got Rookie of the Year that year for Montreal. And the fortunate thing, I think, as a Canadian, is being able to play numerous positions, because my position ended up to be slot back, which was a perfect position for me. But you could play there, slot back, play a little tailback, but I was a little light. But I played with such great players that they could hide my defaults. So there you go. But we had great quarterbacks: Sonny Wade, Jimmy Jones, Joe Barnes. Junior IU, Peter Dallariva. The list goes on and on. I know that a few of them are coming up. I know Ed George, who's was an all-star, all-American guard. This guy was a beast. They're all coming up, and I'm looking forward to seeing them all. I hope I recognize them, but but it's going to be fun.
Obviously, with people who are following the CFL today, Ian, they see the differences when it comes to how these guys make the team and stuff like that. You're actually talking about a time of when the CFL was quite different, because hearing that the Alouettes were able to get you a scholarship to South Carolina, which obviously is it's still very prestigious football college in the SEC, and then. Obviously, we see he played within junior football, and then also he played with Loyola, right?
No, I never played with Loyola. They told me get back into school.
Okay.
And so I would go to Loyola, and then when Loyola players went to practice, I went down to the stadium and played for Montreal.
Ah, okay.
That's why I ended up at 19 playing. So I was the youngest in the league, but 3.5 years.
So you're moonlighting a little bit, I would say, right?
I don't know if moonlighting. I was happy to moonlight if that's moonlighting.
I mean, what is it like being a 19-year-old playing pro football? Because as I said, most guys now in the NCAAs, they play until they're 22. And then maybe they get drafted, maybe they don't. And then they come to the Alouettes, either via Canadian draft or via free agency. What was it like being a 19-year-old and then, asked to be a pro football player at that age?
Well, first of all, I was quite exciting making the team. I had Marv Levy made you feel at home. I had a great GM who actually was my coach in junior. So I had a lot of people around me that I knew. So I felt comfortable. Making it was tough. I think the toughest thing for me, I didn't want to lose not making it, and so I just kept fighting at it and playing because I play sort of an American position, and you got great coaches that pull out the talent in you, and I was very, very fortunate, and I was at the right place, right time, all that. But I am proud that happened.
Cliff?
Now talk to us about 50 years ago. You were in that Grey Cup game.
Don't say 50 years ago.
Hey, I didn't say it. So allegedly, according to the Alouettes themselves, you guys won it in 1974.
There you go.
But
yeah,
just as a young man playing in that game, I mean, obviously the pressure is there to win because Montreal, compared to those Eskimos or Edmonton teams, I shouldn't say that anymore, teams of the past, they were just simply dominant as well. I mean, what did it take? Go ahead.
I think you had twofold. Edmonton was a powerhouse in the West. Montreal, unbelievably, was a powerhouse in the East. Under the tutelage of Marv Levy, we went to 4 Grey Cups. He built a team similar, and I'm going to say this, and I hope you understand. The team was cohesive. When the defense had to play well and they had great players, they came to play. When the offense I think it's similar to what you're seeing on the field this year. This team is the real McCoy. This team that we have now reminds me a lot of the team that I played with back in the 70s and 80s. The defense came through when they need to. They're strong players, and the coaches have great backups. Come on, where do you have a third string quarterback that can play first string? I mean, it's amazing watching them play. They're very talented, and they're extremely, extremely well coached. And they play as a team, and that's the most important. They play together as one. And that's how we played. And when one person wasn't doing it, the other person, chipped in. But that's what I just wanted to say. So I think this Edmonton game is going to be quite interesting to watch.
Now, back then when you were participating in the Grey Cup game itself, did the nerves set in the sense that you're a 19-year-old kid, essentially, being asked to play a grown man's game? And, does that weigh on you at all? Or were you just so into the moment that you just said, the hell with it, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to have fun with this?
I think the latter. I think it was more in the moment. But I would say that before every game, not only the veterans, they were nervous before a game, especially playing a team like Edmonton, who was a powerhouse. But to be honest, once you kick off the ball in that first hit, if either you're getting hit or you're hitting somebody, it's gone. You're so focused in, you just don't, before you know it, the game's over because you just zoned right in. It's not anything that if I had to think about being afraid or being nervous, I wouldn't be playing. I would be on a stretcher.
Was that the first time being out to BC, Ian? Because you guys didn't play at BC that year in '74.
Yeah, they came and played against us here in Montreal. BC, that Empire Stadium. It was And that AstroTurf is not forgiving. It's like a carpet on cement, so it's not wasn't pleasant at all. But it was first time out there. It's a beautiful city. They got really talented, but the Western teams are all big. They're huge. These guys hurt and they're big. I think in the East we're a little bit faster and more nimble.
But let's talk about some of your teammates, and I think one thing we want to talk about in particular too for you is that you keep on talking about him is about Marv Levy. Anybody who in pro football knows who Marv Levy is, whether it be the NFL or whether it be the CFL. He just has such a strong lineage within football itself. Tell us something that you remember specifically about Marv Levy that really sticks to you still to this day.
I remember. Well, the one funny thing was, before the season started, we were actually at the Autostat, which was like, you don't even want to know what the Autostat was. Guys were coming in town. We were working out. He called me into his office and he said, let's watch some game film, because if people wanted to know, Marv Levy was under with the Redskins, or Washington Redskins. He was the first special teams coach in the NFL. Allen brought him in, and he was the first one. So we were watching special teams, and he was showing me the mistakes these guys were making. And he just turned to me and said, I don't have a problem with you making that mistake, but you make it twice, you're gone. I never made that mistake. It was like, that stuck with me still to this day. It was amazing. There's certain things that, like, you're scared to death. Here you're in a room, you're 19 years old, and you've only spent an hour with your new coach. It's quite rememberable.
Actually, tell us about the Autostat. We're not old enough to have seen. We're just past the point where we weren't able to see the Owls play at the Autostat. What just by what you're saying, Ian, how bad was the Autostat?
Well, when it rained, because the stands, everybody had buckets in front of their, moving around the room. We had buckets taking the water in, and it was like a bad scene from a horror movie. But and small training room, it made it work. It worked, and then fortunately, when we went into the Olympic Stadium, it was like, oh my God, we've gone into a palace. It's like, we had a whirlpool in the back that was 12 by 18. So like you're going, okay, this is like not normal. But it was that was quite an experience moving into that stadium. It was a beautiful era right after the Olympics. Montreal was great. Canadians were winning. Expos were here. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And we had no cell phones, so nobody could take pictures.
That's true. Any discrepancies or any sort of untoward actions were never captured for anyone else to see.
Well, we never did those things. So.
Of course not.
No, of course not.
We've always, with the amount of players that we've spoken with, Ian, we always know when it comes to players, like, there are stories that can be told, and then there are stories that will never, ever be told, even if they do happen to write a book.
Well, I don't have a death wish, so we're pretty good for that one. Yeah, no, it's fun. I'm so excited and waiting for this weekend. I think the memories and the lies that are going to be said are going to be great.
What's obviously I was looking around at, and obviously with, Grey Cup being one of the most well-known and well-respected, trophies in North America. A lot of people don't know is that, or may not remember, is that, your name, if you're on the active roster, your name will be on a plate on the Grey Cup for eternity. For eternity. Yep. Do you, every time you go and you see the Grey Cup, Ian, do you make sure that you make sure that your plate is still there and that your name is still there shining?
It's still there, and fortunately for me, with Marvin, it's there twice on the Grey Cup. So if they get rid of 1 year, I could go to the next year. So it was, the 77 Grey Cup was one of the most, I think, for Montreal, it's the most memorable Grey Cup. I mean, we averaged 65,000 a game. We won every game, and then we beat Edmonton in Montreal. There's almost 70,000. I mean, we can't ask for anything more than a Cinderella year like that. It was amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's going to remember the Ice Bowl. Obviously, I know what you're talking about, and I just hope that, 170. Once we get, I guess in the next couple of, once we get to the 50th anniversary for that one, you'll be able to celebrate it for 2 of your championships, right?
we already did the 77. Now we'll do the 74 again. Well, the 77 was the 25, so I think I have a few more years to go. Anyways, no, but that's good.
What are the things that you remember? Obviously, you talk about the Big O, and you talk about you played over at Empire, and you went over to, and obviously over at the Autostat. You're talking about the bad turf over at Empire. What was the turf like? Obviously, it was a quote unquote newer turf over at the Olympic Stadium, but
not much different. Not much difference.
No?
It wasn't. Basically, AstroTurf back there was like they tried to make it look like fake grass as people have in their backyard.
Right.
But underneath is a sponge cushion that once you get all that rain, it's gone, and you're basically hitting concrete. The thing about AstroTurf back then, when you got tackled, you hit it once, you bounce, you hit it twice. So you always had some injury, and you had all these turf burns and everything else. It was quite nasty.
I was wondering. I mean, because we see even to these days, even though we have the newer grass, I guess we can call it, or synthetic grass, that they still wear the I guess I don't even know what they're called, but it's like you guys were wearing large bandages to save your skin. I'm trying to remember. You guys had that in the 70s too, right? Or was it
we didn't not like they have today. We never really taped our arms or anything like that. Some guys put tape on their elbows. I just taped my wrist. That was it.
Okay. Let's talk about a little bit more about your career, because obviously at the 50th anniversary now, you did play with that. You had a nice career in the CFL. You went from Montreal, you went to Ottawa, you went to Winnipeg, and then you came back and played not only with the Alouettes, but you also played with the Concords. When you look back at your career, what to you is going to stand out the most? Obviously, you've won multiple cups, but what's going to stand out to you the most?
I think the era with the teams that I started with from 74 and then getting better up to 78, getting traded to Ottawa was kind of a shock. Marv had left, and the coach at that time, Scannella, he sort of messed the team up in the sense getting rid of all the top players. I don't know, maybe it was a cost factor. I don't know. But playing in Ottawa was quite exciting. I was fortunate to play there and got on the All-Star team there, and so that helped. But they right the next year they traded you to Winnipeg. Go figure. But Winnipeg with Ray Yauch was a great place to play. Again, a great team. Dieter Brock was our quarterback, and then I had the opportunity to get back with Montreal, and I wanted to come home. Montreal is a great city, and I love the team. I love the people and the environment.
Obviously, you have multiple rings.
Yep.
I'm curious to know, and let me bring Cliff back in here, and he'll be able to listen to the question that I'm going to ask you. So you have multiple Grey Cup rings. Do you ever wear them? Are you planning on wearing them this weekend? But if you don't, where do you keep them?
Well, I won't tell you where I keep them, but
I mean, like on your mantle. That's what I mean.
I wear one ring all the time. I wear the ring. I don't wear two because that's a little too much. But I will be wearing a ring this weekend. But I wear it all the time, anyways. Yeah. So, and this weekend I'll probably change rings and put the 74 on.
Okay.
I was going to say, whatever security deposit box you keep them in, you don't have to tell us, but
it's the RBC at the corner of. I know there was one other thing too, and obviously we really appreciate your time and you joining us, Ian, because just talking about. You're a part of it, obviously a huge part of the 74 team and Grey Cup champ and stuff like that. I know there's one question, Cliff, that Cliff wanted to ask you specifically about your time when it comes to the Alumni Association, right, Cliff?
Yes. As many people may or may not know, you are president of the Alouettes Alumni Association. How did that come about that you became president of the Alumni Association?
Well, being in Montreal, I came back to Montreal, and they had the alumni going, and one of the alumni president was stepping down, and they had a mandate that every 2 or 3 years somebody had to be voted in, and a couple of us raised our hands. I got voted in, and then then whatever COVID hit and everything else. But the team is trying to get us all back like we used to, doing a lot of appearances, especially for kids and the city itself, and being community driven. So I'm looking forward to. I think this year we're gonna, in the off season, try to work a little harder to get more guys out, and because we have not so much the older guys like myself, but we have the 2004 and the Calvito era. You have those guys, and they're contributing. So I'm looking forward. I think it's nice to keep that nostalgia going, and it helps young kids grow.
Now, when someone becomes an alumni, like when they decide, okay, they're calling it a career, and they officially become alumni at that point, what's the process? What's your role in that, in as far as trying to help them, I guess, transition into a post-football career, or just even post-football life in general?
That's a hard one, because some people have planned for it, some don't, and the ones that don't, you're trying to steer them along. Some of them, have left the city and gone back down to the States, and then there's the alumni are fortunate, like the Canadians, and that, to have a wide reach of businesses that do take players on and try to mentor them. Most guys have careers, or have back then a lot of them worked at the same time. So I think as alumni, it's a responsibility to help transition you from playing pro football. And I think a lot of it is people, when you transition, it's kind of a weird not playing, and you feel different. But pretty soon, with having alumni around and you're still active with the team, it wears off, and you get back into playing a proper role of the society.
Now, you've got some alumni that are actually coaches on this team. I mean, I know that's just one of many avenues that former players can go to if they want to still have that football fix met.
I mean, yeah, well, you got one of the best player, one of the nice Canadian from Montreal, Wally Wano, coming in. He's a Hall of Famer, won multiple Grey Cups with Calgary and BC. Great coach, outstanding person, one of probably the nicest guys you want to meet. So yeah, and he's brought people along that were players too. So yeah, I think alumni plays a big part helping players. I think it's also helping when the team can't have players out there, having football and ex-Alouettes with kids and everything else. It's important, I think, to keep sports active, and kids are our future. I'm not the future. The kids are our future.
No, but you got to be that gateway too, I think, as well, just to help remember the past, because as they say, those who don't learn about the past are doomed to repeat it. So
yeah,
I think there's definitely a role within that as well.
Yeah, there is a role. I think you. Plus, we also grow up a little bit. We've left Crescent Street alone now, so we're good to go.
Yeah, that's one retirement. I think Tim and we've had to make that quite some time ago too. So
there you go. There you go.
I do have another quick question. You wore number 10, of course, when you were with the Alouettes. Take a look at other members of the team who have worn number 10 since then. Has there been any number 10 that has really stood out to you as been like, wow, that's the kind of guy?
Well,
I'm thankful he's wearing my number.
Well, Mamba, is this? He was the linebacker.
Enoch Mwamba, yes.
Yeah, he did that number proud. He was a great player, good player. Watching him, even though he was defense, he was a very good player. I'll tell you a little nostalgia. When I first started, George Dixon, who everybody may know, Hall of Famer, had asked me to wear his number, which was 28. So for 3 games, I wore 28. And then Marv Levy came to me and said, Ian, you're going to have to pick another number. They're retiring George's number. So I went, shit. And then so I looked, and then, we were doing all these speaking engagements. So I said, okay, LaFleur, Dawson, I'm taking number 10. So there we go. That's how that came about.
Nice.
Yeah. I like that.
And the current number 10, I think, has to be doing you proud as well.
He's doing great. He's doing a great job too. Yep. I think actually everybody in that uniform today is doing me proud. They're doing Montreal proud.
I love hearing the stories, Ian, when it comes to how players come across getting their numbers. Sometimes they'll pick it themselves, or they'll quote unquote buy it from another player, or in your case, it was offered and you had to switch. And as we were saying, I know we were joking before, these are the stories that can be told that are probably some of the coolest to hear, because you get to hear the inside stories of certain things and how, players that people have followed for such a long time. It's like, I'm a fan of number 10, Ian Mofford. Oh, I didn't know he had another number. That's the type of thing where that these stories are great to hear. And
Great, thank you.
Obviously, we really appreciate your time, Ian.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and we hope to obviously come and see you on Sunday for sure.
Please do. I like to shake your hands. Thank you very much for having me.
How would you like to be a 19-year-old rookie playing for the very first year in pro football and winning the Grey Cup?
When I was 19 years old, do you know what I was doing? Not winning the friggin' Grey Cup. I'll tell you that right now. I may have watched it on TV. That's about the extent of me in the Grey Cup at 19 years old. Wow. I mean, it's mind blowing to think. Like I think about Tyson Philpott, 23 years old, winning his first Grey Cup, his second year in the league.
Yeah.
Okay, that's young. That's a guy who's got a future and more to come and all that stuff. But imagine at 19 years old, you're playing with grown ass men and winning a championship in football. That is just incredible. There's simply no other way to describe it. I mean,
and by the time he's 22, he has his name on that cup twice.
I mean, that's a hell of a flex. I mean, there's what else can you say? I mean, wow.
Yeah, obviously we hope to have Ian on for a little bit more. He was gracious in giving in his time. We obviously thank him quite a bit. And if we can have him on again and go over some more of his stories, or to talk about the Alumni Association a little bit more, because that's a very interesting thing in itself for the Alouettes, and being able to get out into the community with these guys. And because you got some the questions you asked were very poignant. I'm glad you asked them too, Cliff, about making that transition from pro football to being a former pro football player. So it's I like it. It was just just an absolute pleasure to have him on, and just to get that insight, because it in a way, I mean, I was 3. I was 3. So
I was -4.
See, there you go.
Yeah. I was barely a thought.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, so obviously that leads us into the game this week. And currently, as we're taping the show, Cliff, the Alouettes are currently a 7.5 point favorite, with the over/under currently at 51.5. This is like last week, as we mentioned, with Cody's return for the very first time to Saskatchewan since being traded. This will be Gino Lewis's first time coming back to Montreal since he went over to Edmonton as a free agent. There's so many different storylines for this game coming in, and besides the 50th anniversary celebration, isn't there?
Oh, tons. I mean, as I said, both these teams are in a lot of, just looking at the records, you think they're going in two completely different directions. But I mean, Edmonton, they've been through it this year, but they're getting it figured out. And all of a sudden, they're not the joke franchise that they appear to be. They are riding a 3-game winning streak. I mean, okay, finally getting off the schneid, losing your first 7 games, and then you win. You're like, okay, this is great. This is wonderful. And then they win again and again. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, they didn't come to play. Okay, I think they're getting things figured out. So all of a sudden, as I said, this game is not the gimme you would have thought it would have been even a month ago. You look at the Elks and you thought, oh, okay, this is easy dub right here. Not so easy. And let's not forget, the Alouettes did play the Elks earlier this year during that tough period for them, and they were lucky to escape Edmonton with a win. Quite frankly, I mean, they played great football, but so did Edmonton. I mean, and they're going to be facing that same team again. Just this time around, no Chris Jones at the helm. Like now, Jarius Jackson is, starting to slowly implement his way and trying to show what he's able to do, especially with new ownership for the Edmonton Elks as well.
Yep. Yeah.
The funny thing is, like, the current owner, Larry Thompson, he's now 1-0 as a CFL owner, so he's going to want to continue that. I mean, there's a lot to look at with this game here as well. We weren't sure if we were going to be seeing Trey Ford at quarterback coming to Montreal. Instead, due to injury, it's going to be once again McLeod Bethel Thompson that the Alouettes will be facing again this year.
Yeah.
He too, though, is it almost felt like being benched for Trey Ford kind of woke him up. You know, I guess was it the offense that was being called? Was it Chris Jones just being stubborn with a lot of things? I mean, no one could truly say, but I mean, MBT, is on a redemption tour of him for himself as well, and he's going to want to show up and show out. Gino Lewis is a prime example of, this is going to be his first time back, and I don't believe he harbors any ill will towards the Alouettes organization or anything like that. Like, he obviously his goal was to secure the bag in Edmonton. He did that. Props to him for that. But I can't help but wonder if he looks at this championship team and thought, "Damn, I helped build this thing, and what do I have to show for it?" I mean, other than a bunch of money from Edmonton. But I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see Gino again, see him live playing again, see him do his thing. I mean, he'll be motivated. There's no question in my mind. He's going to want to show up and show out against this Alouettes team. But he's got some good company with him. As we talked about earlier, Javon Leake, Justin Rankin on the ground have been absolutely dangerous for the Elks. Tevin Jones, who was in our training camp this year, and unceremoniously released, all of a sudden he found the right system. It clearly wasn't in Saskatchewan. It clearly wasn't in Montreal. I don't know what it is about Edmonton. He's doing phenomenal. He's playing like the Tevin Jones that I thought the Alouettes had signed back in February. Lo and behold, he wasn't at training camp, but this guy's shown up and doing absolutely great things for the Elks. I mean, this game is not going to be a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is a game where you need to put your best foot forward, and it's clear that the Alouettes are, without question, doing that. With the moves that are being made and with the personnel decisions that are being made for this game, they're not taking this Elks team lightly by any stretch.
No, I don't think they should. As you said, I mean, so many different storylines for this game. The return of Cody Fajardo under center, obviously, with Austin Mack coming back, we'll see how much of an effect that he is. I mean, it's Tevin Jones, the guy who beat him out. Charleston Rambo. So I mean, it's it's just very interesting to see. Again, we're talking about the O-line and are they able to help get the running game going? Will the defense be able to stay in check when it comes to the running game? Obviously, they're giving up their passes, but they've continued to do the Noel Thorpe game of bend don't break. So it's and I agree with you with Gino. But I think he'll want to play because he was kept in check pretty much the last time these two teams met in Edmonton. So,
yep. And again, I mean, Gino does still maintain a home here in Montreal. I mean, he considers himself still very much a Montrealer. He just happens to be making his living out in Edmonton. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who's going to be excited to see Gino play live for the first time in ages. And I have to believe he's going to be shown the love. Apparently Cody Fajardo, they showed a video package kind of thanking him for his time when he was with the Rough Riders. I can't confirm that, but my understanding was they did show something like that in anticipation of him starting the game, but they still showed it regardless.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they put a little something together for Gino as well. And as well they should. You can't just pretend this guy never played for you. I mean, he is unquestionably one of the superstars that helped this renaissance with the Alouettes. Like, I mean, he was there through the bad times and helped create what we consider now to be the good times. And again, it's along with Vernon Adams Jr., like guys that should have been Grey Cup champions with the Alouettes. Didn't work out for any number of reasons. It is what it is. But it'll be good to see Eugene Lewis back in Montreal. Just unfortunate that it happens to be in green and gold. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Before we go, we want to remind everybody that we are on social media. There are many places that you can find us. Don't forget you can check us out over on X. You can over at Alouettes Flightdeck. You can find us over at Facebook at Alouettes Flightdeck Pod. Instagram and YouTube over at Alouettes Flightdeck. Don't forget you can also check out all the historical shows for the pod, and that is over at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca. If you're wanting to check out any of the past episodes of the show, also you can check those out over on YouTube. That would be either the audio version, the video version, or our post-game show, Flight Deck Live. That is whether we are going to be in stadium at Percival Molson after a home game, or if it's going to be with the Alouettes on the road, you will always catch us basically right after the clock hits 0. So make sure you do catch up. If you want to rep merchandise of the podcast, you can do so by heading over to flightdeckgear.ca. Remember that we are going to be having our second annual meetup on Thanksgiving Monday. So if you want to get your if you want to get your Cartoon Bird 56 t-shirt, that would be the time to do so. And also don't forget too, one thing that isn't showing up on the screen, we have added our Twitch channel to the lineup where you can catch the replay of all of our Flight Deck lives also. So I forget anything? I don't think so, right?
Well, just make sure like, subscribe, follow, however it is that you're consuming this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you're along for the ride. Make sure you get that notification to let you know that when we go live, when a new podcast drops, all of that good stuff. And you can only do that by liking, subscribing. Also, leave some comments too. If you like us, tell a friend, tell a coworker, tell everybody. If you don't like us, tell us. Let us know what we're doing wrong so we can make it right. We do this for you, so we want to hear from you. So make sure you're following. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you do all that good stuff. Interact with us. We are here for you. We do this for you, and we want to hear from you.
Exactly. Any last tidbits here, Cliff? Because as I said, obviously it's going to be a very interesting game. Obviously, with the game with Edmonton coming to town, but also the 50th anniversary celebration of the 1974 Grey Cup champs.
I'm going to go ahead and say that this game is going to be sold out, simply because people see the uniforms now. They see what's happening. The Alouettes are 9-1 and very close, believe it or not, to clinching a playoff berth. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that could happen as early as this weekend.
And I will expound on that. They
Please.
could technically clinch third place. So they could clinch third place. According to the CFL, it's not clinching a playoff spot yet because there are so many different variables. But technically, yes. Owls win, Tiger Cats lose. The Owls would clinch third place.
Yeah,
in the CFL East.
Put it this way, they can finish no worse than third, which
there you go.
In the East, that's pretty much making the playoffs. I mean, obviously the goal is to host the Eastern Final in November.
Yes, that is correct.
And the Alouettes will obviously not stop until they've got that designation. But it's still kind of crazy to think that we're in August, late August, but still in August. And with this Alouettes team playing absolutely phenomenal, exciting football, to be in this position right now is far beyond a lot of people's comprehension, and a lot of pundits who just didn't think the Alouettes, they were lucky. They got lucky to win. Like, no, not lucky. This is not luck at all. This team was not built with luck. This team was built with skill. This team was built with absolutely phenomenal players, outstanding coaches, and simply put, a great fan base that is there for this team, ride or die, win or lose. A bit more wins than lose, but still, this team is getting the support and getting the love, and it's finally being recognized as, a premier force in the Montreal sports scene. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm calling my shot right now. This Sunday's game, as far as I know, there are still tickets available, but I'm going to guarantee that this game will be sold out. Come Sunday.
What is it? What is their new number? You surprised me. You surprised me for once, having to look up something. Over. The new number is just over, until we add more people, it's just over 23,000. The new number is 23,035. So you were saying It will be at least 23,035.
Yes, I think with the walk-up crowd, I think with all the hype that's being built around not just this matchup, but with the uniforms, the 50th anniversary, all this, the fact the Alouettes have been absolutely phenomenal in 2024, being a Sunday night, no less. I mean, it's still technically the weekend, so you know, I mean, some of you might have to, go to work the next day. Some of you may still be on vacation. So, I mean, if you're able to, if you haven't already, get your tickets, because this is going to be an absolutely fun atmosphere. This is going to be an absolutely phenomenal crowd, and it's going to be a fun spectacle to watch. So, I mean, if you can't make it, you watch it on TV if you want. But I mean, if you've got the opportunity to be at Percival Molson Stadium, I strongly advise that you go out, get tickets, do whatever it takes to be a part of this crowd. It is going to be lit.
GoAlsGo.com is where you can get your tickets. So we will be seeing you post-game from Percival Molson Stadium on Sunday, but stay tuned to all of our socials for when we are going to go live and any other information that may come across the wire. So we hope you enjoy the week, and we will see you either on Flightdeck Live or we'll see you next week. I think, even as a bye week, we'll try to come up with something. So, so for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on final approach.